Paranormal in Pennsylvania may discuss topics such as suicide, murder, and other potentially upsetting things. Listener discretion is advised.
Are we good? Okay. Cool. Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and hauntings.
Today we're going to be traveling to Waynesburg, Pennsylvania to talk about our first almshouse on the podcast. I'm Erica.
And I'm Sarah.
Let's get into it. Okay, so as I mentioned in the intro, it's in Waynesburg, Pennsylvania. And just so everybody knows, they are normally open for walk-ins throughout the year, but right now they're only open for appointments. By appointments
on
only.
The one day we decided to go.
Yes. I don't even know if I told you, but I did get an email back from them.
What did they say?
They said, we're really sorry. Try a few days in advance, which makes sense.
Yeah. What? You can't give us this 1 hour later tour?
Yeah. So, yes. So we'll get into the history. The Greene County home opened in 1862, and during its time open, 6,000 residents, or they were called inmates, circled through the home.
Inmates?
Yeah, I think back then it was normal to call people in the almshouses like inmates, because I saw that in various sources, but throughout my research, just called them individuals.
Yeah.
That felt better.
Yeah.
Yes. So, interestingly enough, the way that these poorhouses, almhouses started, before the Civil War, legislation was passed across the country, with PA being one of the states, that each county had to create houses that provided care for the poor and impoverished.
Did not know that.
Yeah, which was supposed to be a good thing. And they actually usually started off as family homes, which makes sense, and then they were converted into these almshouses. So it was small, and then they kind of grew larger. Greene County acquired the house in 1861 from the Reinhardt family, so it was like a family home.
That makes sense. It's a giant house, though.
Yes, but it was like built.
Oh, built out. Okay.
Yes. So the first part of it, I think, was just that brick building in the center.
Okay.
There's like a brick building in the center, and that was the original home. That part of the house was actually for the steward. And the new wing was where the individuals that were being admitted to these houses would stay. Okay. Isaac Pipes was actually the first person to live in the facility and was admitted on June 2nd, 1962. There were 83 individuals who would be admitted.
1962?
18.
Okay.
Oh, no. Oh, it has to be 18.
I was like...
I wrote 19, but...
Okay.
So in 1862, there were 83 other individuals who would also be admitted to the facility in the first year. And something that I didn't realize about these almshouses is that being poor or impoverished is actually one of the least likely reasons that someone would be admitted. And they actually started turning into basically asylums.
Oh.
For like the mentally unwell and people that couldn't exist in society.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which is why earlier I said, it was supposed to be good, but...
Oh, well...
Yeah. So, not that that's a bad thing, that people were...
No, I know what you mean,
yeah,
but it's like, that's what happens with, like, Pennhurst when they're taking care of people.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I meant. So, at first, most of the issues surrounding the place was due to overcrowding. Like I mentioned earlier, 83 individuals stayed over the course of a year. I could not find a source that confirmed whether or not they were all there at the same time.
That's a lot of people in one space.
Right. There were only 20 rooms at first.
Yeah.
So hopefully not at the same time.
Well, if it's all families, I don't know. Still seems like a lot of people.
Yes. So conditions grew so bad due to the environmental factors. 1884, all individuals were removed so that they could construct a new wing.
Okay. To
add in more rooms. Many were actually sent to Dixmont State Hospital.
Oh, good.
Another episode.
Treatment was great there.
Yes. No. And then eventually 38 rooms were available with the construction of the new wing, which was good. But then problems grew worse with the addition of a new steward, William B. Cage. And in parentheses, I wrote, we hate him. Because we do. He was awful. I honestly think this might be one of the worst people that we've covered.
Oh, wow.
So he used the food. I'm just going to list things. He used food that was set aside for the residents to throw parties outside for him and his friends, peers, whatever.
Yeah.
And so residents would be fed leftover scraps from these parties, which is awful. He chained up individuals in the basement rooms of the newest wings.
That feels like not legal. It
No.
felt illegal even for the hospitals we've covered, but especially for a house like this. What is his authority?
Right. They're not supposed to be asylums. They're supposed to be almshouses. Like, it's not, you're not supposed to lord over anybody. But so he would do that. He starved individuals who committed minor infractions. So again, like, who are you to decide? And he forced residents to bathe in the creek house behind the building during the winter months.
During the winter in Pennsylvania.
Yes, which is cold.
Yes.
He also beat residents with a cane, which is, to me, why I was like, after everything else, you're now committing physical abuse too. And some sources reported that he staffed the kitchen with a cook who was blind, so the food consumed by the residents was usually undercooked or filled with flies. And I don't get the point of that.
That also feels hazardous to the cook.
Yes, I was wondering. So that's why I put some sources reported, because I think some of this, that one in particular, the way multiple sources talked about it, it seemed like that was just something that was said, but we don't know if it was like real. So I wanted to include it, but that just wouldn't make sense. And what cook would say yes to that?
Yeah.
Yeah. In an article written about the conditions, there were several firsthand accounts by the inmates just about William and the conditions in the almshouse, and those that contributed disappeared from the house's records. So, yeah. And nobody knows what happened to this day, because obviously the circumstances were very unclear. Luckily, due to that article, early 1900s, William is removed. New rooms were added to bring the total rooms up to 52, and conditions improved.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
But it's a shame that it took so long to do that.
Yes. I mean, 1960s is really when it started, because that was when it transformed into a retirement home. So it was almost 100 years after it had started. And then finally, in 1971, the Greene County Historical Society took over the building and continued to operate a local history museum, which looks really cool from the outside.
Yeah.
I really do want to see it.
And from peeking in the doors.
Yeah, we did do that.
Well, I wanted to see. There was a light on, and we weren't sure if it was a security light or someone working there. So we decided to get very close to the doors and look into them. And it turns out it was indeed a security light.
We missed the whole sign that said that they were closed for the Harvest Festival. We just were one-track minded, right up to the door. So that's the general history of it. It's got a lot of history, which we always say lends itself to some ghosts. So we'll get into the hauntings. Interestingly enough, there's only like one ghost that they name. A lot of this stuff is like general hauntings, which it was crazy to me that there's so much, but various people have covered the house, which was really cool to watch. So the first one, I guess I'll just talk in general first. The paranormal activity that they've reported on their own website is just unexplained footsteps, sounds, and smells in the building.
Okay.
Some people have witnessed full body apparitions.
Okay.
And that's what they say has happened. So the rest of my information comes from these investigations that people did in the house. And the first one is from the Paranormal Quest study. So the first part of this video, they interview the director, Matt Cumberledge, and he gave a bunch of information, which some of it is still history, but lends itself again to the ghosts directly. And I think it was super interesting. So he said at least 1,000 passed in the building, but some of the deaths were likely not reported. So 6,000, that's a sixth.
Yeah.
I mean, that's terrible.
That's true. That's a really high rate.
Yeah. The director did have a paranormal experience himself, and this is insane to me. So he went up the stairway, and when you get up the stairway, there's a hallway here. And he had to move one of the doors that doesn't exist anymore to turn on the lights in the hallway, which I assume is why it doesn't exist anymore. They took it out. When he moved the door again to go back to the hallway, he heard someone at the end of the hallway moving around, like he heard footsteps. And then he heard a door slam. And then an archival box slid down the hallway towards him.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Because there's no way that can be explained away.
No. Nobody else is in the building.
Yeah.
And that is a full-on, like, I am seeing a solid thing happen in front of me that I can't explain.
It's enough for me.
Yeah. Yes. He's also said that he's seen apparitions in the rooms, and they kind of evaporate as you move towards them, which we've seen before. The second floor female dormitories are the most active, according to him. A fun tidbit that he threw in, so they now use these dormitory rooms for storage, and on the weekends they usually keep the doors open to sort of air out the rooms, but if they forget to do that on Monday, they'll hear like moanings and rumblings coming from the insides of the rooms, and they'll like hear whispering and feel someone brush up against you on Monday morning when you start opening the doors.
Oh my gosh, they're like, it's the weekend,
right? Time to party.
It's the weekend. Gotta get my ghouls and I together.
Yes.
And goals. No, I can't.
And goals. I do have to get my goals together, if we're being honest. I mean,
it's too real.
So he also said that the male dormitories were also active, but just kind of mentioned that there's like whispering.
Okay.
And then he said the most interesting event that happened in 1903. And this, again, is part of the history, but directly lends itself to hauntings. So Sarah Nicely and her family came to live at this place. Her husband passed while they were there. And she actually got pregnant by another inmate and had the baby in the building.
Wow.
And the baby must have gotten cold through the night. And so they likely passed. But Sarah ended up realizing that her baby was cold and there was an oven in the room.
No.
And she put the baby in the oven. Now, he said that the baby was likely dead before this happened. Hopefully, but it doesn't feel like it matters. No.
Like, was she mentally, I mean...
That's what I thought. I mean, he never really specified, but that's what I'm thinking.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's obviously a very tragic story. And the thing that he said that stuck out to me was, he said the next morning, the inmates thought that something was in the kitchen, like cooking, like a turkey or something. And it ended up being her baby, like they found it that day. So, yes, not a good story and lends itself to the hauntings. So during the investigation, so now we're in the parts where they were in the house by themselves. They heard unexplained noises, knocking, running up the stairs, tinkering. There was unexplained movement in general areas of the house, so their equipment like picked up some movement.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. There was a lot of activity in the room where Sarah's baby had passed. There were noises. They detected a change in the air pressure and a change in temperature, which I thought was...
Which way? Hot or cold?
They didn't say. Ooh. And I was like, I think either one is crazy.
Yeah. And I also hate that she has my name.
Yeah.
Every time you're like, Sarah's baby, I'm like, I didn't do it.
When I was writing this out, at first I didn't use the H because we're friends. And then I was like, no, I'm going to put the H. Yeah. And I put the H in.
Someone finds it. They're like, what did she do?
So, yeah, so that was kind of crazy. They heard unexplained dragging in the room, which I had never heard before. And it really does sound like dragging. It doesn't just sound like your normal footsteps, which is interesting. And the spirit box they used in the Sarah room. So Sarah makes a noise while they're in there, and they ask, if she's there, and a female voice says hello. And then an investigator feels a hand on his shoulder. So they ask, hey, did you just touch him? And a voice comes through and says yes.
Oh my gosh.
Just terrifying. And then they hear a random laugh after that, and then they hear her say me.
That's weird.
Yeah. I didn't really get that, but I wanted to put it in because it was like pretty significant.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so
she's like, it me. You know who I am.
I am here. Yeah. So yeah, that was, like I said, the Paranormal Quest study, and I really encourage everyone to go watch it because it was really interesting. The next investigation that I looked at was Destination Fear, and this was just a video on YouTube, so it was like 8 minutes of the full episode. And so they pretty much just heard the general things that people were hearing. So they heard footsteps in the woman's ward. They set up a quad to show movement from a ghost. And that sort of worked. Like, they kind of picked up something. But then while that was happening, they heard a huge knock coming from downstairs.
And no one else was in the house, I assume.
Right. And so they went downstairs to go investigate that room. And then, do you remember the barn that we looked at?
Yes. Where it was said hotel something in there, and we couldn't find it.
Yes. So there is a barn. If you are looking at the house this way, like head on, it's to the left of it. And they went in there and they were kind of like, is this haunted? And they heard something moving in the barn and felt like it was moving around them because it was like super dark in there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm glad we didn't go in.
No, me too. Me too. Lastly, I looked at Spirit Walk. They did an investigation as well. And this was so crazy. This video was so good. Like, the way they put this together was really, really good.
Is it YouTube?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. You
Spirit
can just
Walk.
look up Spirit Walk and you should Greene County Almshouse and it should come right up. So they got some responses from all over the house with the spirit box, but it wasn't a normal spirit box. It sounded like Siri.
Oh, it's like a digitized?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. I was actually watching it like with Z next to me and they said something like, one of the words that they said was purgatory. Which is interesting. But he pulled out his phone and he was like, Siri, can you say purgatory?
Wow, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
They had Siri during the Civil War.
Yeah. But I think it was really interesting. So, that, like I said, they got stuff from all over the house. There were a lot of questions. So, like, what is that? Why are you here? Mm-hmm. They asked, like, who are you? Oh no, this is a crazy part. The ghost did not say, who are you? The investigators said, who are you? And they heard a voice come through and say, Phantom.
Oh. That's enough to make me be like, okay.
Goodbye. Yes, they did hear people saying stuff like, be quiet and leave a lot, which makes sense. Yeah. I'm sure that we've talked about this before. I'm sure that, like, these spirits have been disturbed and just want to rest peacefully. At some point, somebody said, help others, which I thought was interesting. So they kind of asked, like, who needs help? And nothing ever came through again. But I thought that was a really significant thing that somebody came through and said.
Well, I'm wondering if it's because that was the original sentiment of the almshouse, like, to help others. So maybe they're making the point, like, we have not helped others, or he has not helped others.
Yes. Yeah. And then at one point somebody came through and said she disappeared. And then they said, wanna see. And then they said, it's in the basement. And then they said, help.
Did they find anything in the basement?
So, no, they asked who needed help. And the answer was Annie. But nothing ever was said about that. So I don't know if somebody named Annie was there.
Right. Is that the baby's name?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So that was an interesting part because it was like one of those things where they weren't even prodding the spirits. Like, they were just coming through the box, which was really interesting. And presumably they were in William's bedroom in the steward's house. At one point they asked, did William spend a lot of time in this room? And somebody came through and said, hit on the head. William was weak.
Oh.
Which is interesting.
Hit on the head. That's interesting.
Yeah.
William is weak, I could see.
Yeah. And then it was really funny. So I'm going to talk about the Sarah room because that was another big part of it. But as they were leaving the whole house, they said, okay, we think we're going to head out, and somebody came through and said, see ya. And I was like, that's cute.
That's so sweet.
I know.
Whenever it's something like that, I always picture it as like a little kid, like saying something nice.
Yes. So like I said, so they did set up stuff in the Sarah room to see if they got any activity. Unexplained noises were picked up like normal. They saw disembodied movement. They heard a disembodied scream. And they heard a disembodied voice / grunt. And then after the grunt, something came through and said, like, where have you been? And then something else came through and said oven.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Babies can't talk. Do they know that?
I don't know.
I'm sorry, it's a terrible joke.
I don't know. So that happened, and then somebody said, like, is someone here? And someone answers, yeah, I'm here.
So that's a lot of activity.
Yeah.
Like consistent voices that seem to be different people.
Yes. Yes. And then I did also want to talk about the basement, because they went down there. Someone's ear started ringing, and then the spirit box came through. And this, I remember this wasn't like kind of the growling voices that other parts of the spirit box have been. This was the Siri voice. And somebody came through and said front case. And nobody really knew what that was. But I thought it was interesting because her ear started ringing.
Is it like a display case, like in one of the displays in the house, maybe?
Maybe. Because again, if it's a museum, and at that point, a house, there had to be shelves, there had to be things put in cases. They heard footsteps in the basement. The spirit box asked them, like, why did you come? Along the same lines as, like, other areas. And at one point says purgatory, which, like, I made a joke because he made that Siri joke about it earlier. But I did think about it while I was watching it, in that I wonder if they are thinking of this like purgatory, and that's so sad because it's such an awful place to be stuck.
But probably, if you think about it, it sounds like it wasn't great in life, and if they can't escape it during the day,
right?
Or during death. During the day, I was thinking, if they can't even escape the room that they're in, that must really feel like purgatory.
Yes, yeah. So I just like really thought about it, because again, a lot of these people were mentally ill. Like, I'm like, they should not be in purgatory.
Yeah,
they've already had like a rough enough life. And then the last thing that they show in the video, so this didn't, like I said, when they were leaving, it was the see ya, but the last thing they show in the video is a vacant hallway, and you hear a disembodied voice say, "We will meet you in hell."
Okay. Maybe I'm not upset that we couldn't get in.
It's kind of crazy. It was kind of a crazy...
That sounds freaky.
Yeah. So that was the spirit walk.
Yep.
Individuals. They, like I said, that video was so good. Lastly, I found a psychic medium and Greene County native Kevin Paul. He contributed to an article and apparently has written 3 books on paranormal activity just in Greene County. It's
alleged that it's the most haunted county in Pennsylvania, actually.
Which is crazy because it's so small. I'd never heard of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was interesting. And he did explore the Historical Society building, and he stated, and this is why I included this last, he said, "We were able to catch a series of lights in the air close to the ground out behind the barn that we tried for a couple years to get debunked. Even the camera manufacturer mentioned the word UFO. It appeared to be a row of flying lights. It used to be the county poor farm, so it's fairly active, but there's a lot of non-human activity there."
Okay, wait. Now it's a hotbed for aliens?
Homie, I don't know.
I mean, it is kind of in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Wow.
But that also, I mean, if you think about it, like the series of lights, that could just be ghost lights, right? Like we've talked about like orbs and even just like strings of lights that, not strings, but you know what I mean? Like little patterns of lights, I think. So while Kevin was there, a camera that they were using caught an exit light in one of the hallways coming on. But the crazy part is the exit light was in a circuit that had no electricity in it at the time. Which was
is crazy.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my findings. If anybody would like to perform a private paranormal investigation, you can. We looked it up. It's $500 for the hours of 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. or $700 if you want to do 6 p.m. to 4 a.m.
And if anyone would like to perform it and invite us, we're happy to split costs.
Yes.
Although the see you in hell thing is making me feel a little trepidatious.
Yeah, no, I know. How are you feeling about actually visiting in the day, in the night, etc.?
So when we were there, we all agreed that it felt weird. And not just because there was no one there, which we didn't know at first, but it just felt weird. It felt like sad and we saw like these crosses in the windows that were tilted over. And I guess maybe that's why like contributes to me feeling like it was very strange and almost abandoned spooky. But I want to go back just to do it, and also because we like history museums.
Yeah.
I would do a ghost hunt, I think, with trained professionals. I don't think I would do it just the three of us. I don't think we are knowledgeable enough yet to handle it.
I agree.
Something else I wanted to say is we did get some EMF 5 readings while we were there. We were walking around the outside with the EMF reader, and it did like stay around 3 and spike up to 5 regularly. So there was some activity.
Yeah. Yes, just from us standing on the porch.
Right.
Which was crazy. But yeah, I agree. I think I definitely want to go in the day. I definitely want to take a professional tour.
Yeah.
Because everything in that region is really interesting. I mean, this is like historical Pennsylvania. So
right.
It's really cool. I agree. I genuinely, when I was watching these videos to like research, I was thinking about the three of us, and I was like, normally when we go places, I feel safe because it's the three of us. Like I, as the scaredy cat, could never do one of these by myself. Any of them. Like just like not even the tunnel.
Yeah.
No thanks. But usually when I think about the three of us in there, I feel pretty safe. And even this one, I was like, no. Like I don't think I could go further than the front door.
Right. There's a few places like that. Like you guys said you would go overnight at Fort Mifflin. I don't know about that.
I was real brave that day for no reason. I don't know why.
Yeah.
So that is the story of the Greene County Almshouse. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this week, and tune in next week to see where we go next.